We have so much PC hardware news to kick off 2025, and one of them is a RTX 5060 benchmark leak. Now, is it accurate? Again, leaks rumors. We'll talk about that in a bit. However, this would also give us a chance to talk a little more broadly about what should we expect from a 60 class GPU generation, and that might help me finally answer this guy. This poor guy has been commenting on every single video I've made for months, asking me to look at the generational GPU price to performance improvement over the years. How about today we answer that question regarding the 60 series in the context of interpreting this type of benchmark result. So whether or not this ends up being a legitimate benchmark, we can still have a nice discussion about 60 class GPUs and what we generally see from them in a price to performance uplift history. But if you're also thinking, man, with the 50 series launching, I need to sell my hardware now, sell my old GPU now to help fund my upgrade before I lose some value with the new generation launching, then please check out Jawa.gg. This is the marketplace for buying and selling PC hardware, and I can save you $10 off your first purchase if you're buying from them using code OWEN10. Check the link in the video description pinned comment, and a huge thank you for them sponsoring today's video. Now here you can do a couple of awesome things. One is you could list things yourself, create your own listing, set your own price. You could even become a seller as like a great side business. But also, if you're just looking for the most convenient way to sell, you can sell directly to Jawa themselves by getting an instant offer by clicking this button. They'll instantly buy CPUs and GPUs. It's a super simple and efficient process if you don't want to take the hassle of making your own listing and just get it off your hands quickly. Also, they sell full pre-built systems, a lot of great deals, a lot of great user reviews. They have a really active Discord server with tons of knowledgeable people on there where you can get some feedback on your build. And again, if you're actually looking for the best value, it's probably buying used. For example, I spotted a 2080 Ti, which will be fast for $300, which is what you normally pay for an RTX 4060 right now, but you're only getting 8 gigabytes on a 4060. This will get you 11 gigabytes at the same price, and it's going to be faster than a 4060 by over 20% on average. So again, click the link in the video description and or pinned comment and use code OWEN10 for $10 off your first purchase. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper into the news today, especially this 5060 leak. First of all, thing to note here is this does say RTX 5060 laptop. It does not say desktop. Now, what do we make of that? It's important, if you're not familiar with laptop GPUs, to mention that laptop GPUs and desktop GPUs are sometimes about the same performance and specs, but oftentimes are not. For example, with the 40 series, the RTX 4060 laptop version was about the same performance as the desktop GPU. But if you looked at something like the 4070, it was very much weaker in the laptop space. The laptop 4070 having only 8 gigabytes of VRAM compared to 12 on the desktop part, different power constraints, all sorts of things. And that's another thing to think of in general, is that the laptops are often going to be more power limited, and it can depend on what laptop it's in and whether that one is giving it its full performance headroom for thermals and power. So there's a lot to question here, even if this is a legitimate leak. Also, some people might be questioning this in the sense that, wait, aren't we expecting to get the 5080 first, and then the 5090, and then the 5070 in Ti, and then the 5060 months later down the line? So isn't this a bit early? I totally get that, and I would say yes, this feels a bit early, except for the fact that this is the laptop GPU. And laptop releases are often different than the desktop releases, so it's possible that we could get 5060 laptops right off the bat, in which case, if we're expecting to get those announced and maybe possibly even available shortly after CES on January 6th, then it's not unreasonable for somebody within one of those laptop companies to have a laptop up and running that they can test out and get us a 3D Mark score on. So I would say that the overall source on this, though, coming from Bilibili on China, I don't have a lot of track record proof of what to make of that. So again, take this for what you will. So if you go by what videocards.com has done here, what they've done, by the way, all my sources will be linked in the video description as usual. They've taken the Best score they've got here at 13,821, and stacked that up against other sources. So they're doing it up against laptops using the 3D Mark database, and they're saying that, okay, that would put the 5060 laptop GPU slightly ahead of a 4060 Ti desktop GPU, if you want to compare it with desktop counterparts. So if you want a rough idea of where this stacks up, 4060 Ti desktop seems to be roughly 5060 laptop performance level based on this leak, which again, may or not actually be accurate. We can talk about that more in a bit. That means that this is noticeably more powerful than a 4070 laptop GPU, and more powerful than a 4060 laptop GPU. And again, 4060 laptop GPUs are generally fairly close in performance to 4060 desktop GPUs. And then this would mean that it's not going to be anywhere near as powerful as something like a 4080 laptop GPU was. So that's where it stacks up in that type of performance graph. If you measure it more directly up against the 4060 laptop GPU, they're claiming that that would show as about a 33% generational performance improvement. Now, again, to answer this comment, once again here to request a look at the history of generational GPU price to performance improvement over the years, how about we look at that in the context of 60 class GPUs and see what we can make of it. So I put together this chart pretty quickly. And what exactly is it? So I have the GPUs, the 760, the 960, the 1060, which had a 3 gigabyte version and a 6 gigabyte version. I chose to use the 6 gigabyte version for this comparison. Then we had the 2060. And again, eventually this got a 12 gigabyte release way later. We're talking about the base 6 gigabyte version that originally released. We got 3060, 4060. I've got the release year. I've got the MSRP. But then I've also inflation adjusted the MSRP to November 2024 dollars. Just using one of those, U.S. Bureau of Labor, whatever, inflation adjustment calculators. So I'm just going to trust that to be doing as good of a job as possible. Adjusting different things for inflation can be kind of a tricky thing. But you can see what these MSRPs translate to in today's dollars, basically. Then I've got the performance versus the previous gen. Now, I don't have all of these GPUs to actually retest them all right now, nor would I have had time to do that for today's video. So where have I gathered these numbers from? These numbers from. There we go. All right, I used TechPowerUp's GPU database. So for example, for the 3060 to 4060 calculation, I've clicked on the 3060, set it as the 100% baseline, scrolled over to the 4060, and we can see that it's an 18% performance improvement, which is roughly in line with my testing and other people's testing. Again, which games you test and all of that can have a big difference on what exact performance differences you get, but the TechPowerUp chart is, first of all, convenient and quick to access for today's video, and second of all, it, again, does tend to line up fairly well with typical reviews. It's not miles apart, so this is at least a good rough estimate for the purposes of what we're doing today. Now, I again went ahead and did that for all of the GPUs. And then I also looked at the price change not inflation adjusted. So to be clear, we're just looking at the straight price change. So for example, the 960 at $199 MSRP compared to the 760 at a $249 MSRP, I said that that was a minus $50 price change. But again, I'm not doing it after inflation adjustment. That's just in raw dollars. Then I did the price divided by the previous generation price. Again, not inflation adjusting, just MSRP versus MSRP, in order to get a price change ratio, basically generationally. So if it's above 1, what you're seeing here is a price increase compared to the previous generation. So for example, the 1066 gigabyte being $299 versus the 960 being $199 is coming in as a 1.5 ratio, meaning it's a 50% price increase because it's a $100 increase and $100 is 50% of the previous generation's price, so that is a 50%, a 1.5 times price compared to the previous generation. And then what I've done is I've done the performance ratio divided by the price ratio. So basically I'm taking the performance versus the previous gen, and I'm dividing it by the result of the price versus the previous gen expressed as a ratio in order to get a number that is the price to performance, well, the performance to price ratio, or in other words, the performance improvement per dollar would be one way of thinking about that, okay? So for example, the 960 was a 38% performance to price improvement, despite the fact that it was only 10% faster than the previous generation. It's only 10% faster than the previous generation, but it cost only about 80% of what the previous generation did, meaning that the performance per dollar improvement is better than just the raw performance improvement. So generations that have an MSRP decrease can make up for the fact that their overall performance might not be very impressive. Whereas you have other GPUs like the 1066 gigabyte, which came in at $300, taking a massive 50% price increase, but also delivering a 72% performance increase. But because it was a 72 performance increase, but kind of compensating for the fact that there's a 50% price increase, means that it was actually only offering a 15% performance to price increase, if that kind of makes sense. So that's what we're looking at here. So the overall column that I think makes for exciting GPU generations is this last column here. So when we see big numbers for a generational price to performance improvement, that means you're getting more performance for your dollar. How many more frames per second am I getting per my dollar is kind of the way to read that last column. So it's exciting to see big performance increases, but those getting kind of hampered by a corresponding price increase, right? You know, there's kind of two columns to look at, and that's where this one kind of brings those together. So what do we make of this? Well, we see that the 760 was offering a 10% increase in performance per dollar, basically. The 960 offered 38% increase. The 1066 gigabyte version offered 15%. Now, if we had looked at the 3 gigabyte version, which was less expensive, this number might be better. But again, we're not really factoring in the VRAM capacities here, and that's another thing we would maybe want to talk about. The 2060 was a 36% performance to price improvement. The 3060 offering 23%, and the 4060 offering 30%. The 4060 didn't offer much in the way of a performance improvement, only around 18%, but it did reduce the MSRP by $30. So that's interesting. So if we go back and look at the 5060 leak here, showing a 33% increase over the 4060, if we look at that in terms of raw performance per generation, well, it's better than some and worse than others, right? Where sometimes we see a 20%, 10%, 16%, 18%. It's better than all of those, but it falls well short of some of the big generations that are offering, you know, that 72 or 59% performance increase. However, those big performance increases coming with big price increases is hampering the impressiveness of that performance per dollar. So here's what where I would kind of look at this. I would say that, you know, if you end up in that 30%-ish performance to price improvement range, you're somewhat in line with typical generations, right? We see some kind of beating 30%, some losing to 30%, the 4060 offering that 30%. So if this ends up being about 30% faster and without an MSRP increase, and that's a big question mark, right? Then, you know, that would be somewhat in line with what we got with the 4060. However, the column that I didn't show here was, you know, VRAM capacity, because that's where we're starting to get kind of an issue here, which is the 3060 jumped up to 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and then we went back down to 8 with the 4060. And if the 5060 comes in at 8 again, which is what it's rumored to be, well, okay, you get 30% more performance. Well, now you're getting a lot of performance. You're getting a GPU that could actually handle some pretty heavy-duty graphic settings. But if you don't have the VRAM capacity to enable those graphic settings, and things like frame generation also use more VRAM, and as we go on in time and get closer to the next console generation and all of that, games tend to use more VRAM. Well, yeah, you can always turn down settings to stay within your VRAM buffer, and I've done whole videos on this. But it's gonna be pretty frustrating to have to do that, depending on the MSRP, right? So I think if we're still coming in around $300, 8 gigabytes is gonna feel pretty bad at $300, in my opinion. So, in other words, I think a 30% performance increase could be pretty interesting, depending on the pricing. But if it's still coming in around $300, I'm gonna have trouble recommending someone spend $300 on a graphics card that only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So I don't know, we're gonna have to see what happens here. I think that's gonna be kind of the big issue. Now, again, whether or not this particular leak ends up being accurate, again, I think that this column over here gives us something of an idea of what's typical. Somewhere in that 20 to 30% price to performance improvement is fairly typical generationally for the 60 class. But again, you've got if you look at these inflation adjusted pricing, it's interesting because it seems like they're trying to get back down to around this $300-ish mark for the actual MSRP, but when you deal with adjusting for inflation, that might explain why the 4060 is basically what a lot of people would have considered maybe to be more properly named a 4050, where we've, if you actually look at the GPU die and everything like that, it seems like they kind of jumped back down a slot in order, I think, to keep their MSRPs where people are, more comfortable paying for the 60 class. But that also meant that the performance generationally was maybe not crazy good. You lost the VRAM capacity, so I think there may have been a bit of a switcheroo on our GPU generations here. GPU naming scheme versus the GPU dies that you're actually getting for it. Anyway, I think that's enough of that for today's video. How about we jump into the rest of the GPU news? We're also getting a harder, at least leaked launch date for the RTX 5080. So we're expecting at this point to hear about the announcement on January 6th at CES for the 5080, as well as the 5090 and 5070 and 5070 Ti. But which ones actually launch first and at what date? The latest rumor is the 21st of January for the 5080 as being the first GPU that we actually get, and that one coming before we get cards like the 5090. So, and as far as when to expect reviews and everything like that, well, if this 21st date ends up actually being true, you generally either get GPU review embargoes on the same day they launch or the day before they launch. But generally it's within a day or so of the launch date. So you would expect reviews around that time frame. Now, where is this coming from? I spotted it at WCCF Tech, but they're not the source of the information. The source is HKEPC on Twitter, just saying 5080, 21st January. Now, I believe he's a leaker who has hit things accurately in the past, therefore adding a bit more credence to this than just some random person on Twitter putting a date on the 5080. Either way, that sounds reasonable. If we're getting the announcement on January 6th, you would expect a few weeks and then the actual GPU launch. So near the end of January sounds right, regardless of whether this specific leak actually has the correct date. Now, we're also seeing some PCs showing RTX 5080 and 5070 Ti and at iBuyPower. However, when you look at the actual listings of these, this clearly looks like it was a quick copy and paste without a lot of thought. For example, it's saying a 5080 Super and a 5070 Ti Super. In other words, I wouldn't read too much into anything else you see here because it looks like a sloppy copy and paste, updating one of their 40 series models where there is a 4070 Ti Super and just changing the 4 to a 5 without thinking about the fact that it's not going to be the Super series yet or anything like that. So anyway, kind of I think a bit of a nothing as far as what we can learn from these listings then, given that sloppiness level of those listings. Now, one thing I think is kind of interesting is we're getting VESA announcing DisplayHDR True Black 1000 and ClearMR 21000 specs for premium OLED monitors, and already getting some monitor manufacturers on board with this. So the idea here would be, especially with the True Black 1000, now it's nice that OLEDs can do true black, meaning you can actually turn pixels off and get black on things that should be black rather than gray and kind of glowy, which is really nice, but OLED monitors don't always have the highest peak brightness levels. So the True Black 1000 is an increased rating for the peak brightness level. And ClearMR 21000, the ClearMR is designed to have an objective standard for motion clarity, so not as much ghosting in motion, things like that. So anyway, as you look at monitors and monitor reviews, you might start to see these specs showing up on them. Which I think it's good to have some clarity and standards for what these actually mean. Now, in the Nvidia space, with their new desktop GPUs coming out, cool, but remember that Nvidia's focus right now, clearly financially, is in the AI space, and it's looking like Nvidia is really gonna be looking at doubling down on robotics. So computers designed for, humanoid and otherwise robotic robots. And this seems like it might be the next frontier for pushing the whole AI space forward is, okay, we have, chatbots, we have generative AI on PC, but what about getting that AI into actual like humanoid robots that can then, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Anyway, Nvidia's got their Jetson Thor computers, apparently coming by next year, which are designed to work in these robot AIs. So, I mean, we're definitely moving into a different era in tech history with all this AI stuff. It'll be very interesting to see where it all plays out. And what NVIDIA does with their GPU pricing, given how much money they can make on all of this AI business. Now, I was looking for any new information about AMD GPUs, and we do have a bit with AMD RDNA4 based Navi 48 GPU to bring AV1 B-frame support. Details leaked in GPU Open libraries. Now, okay, so what do we get out of this? Well, first of all, I mean, cool. That means that some RDNA4 GPUs will support AV1 encoding. But the fact that it's only the Navi 48, it looked like when I read into this that the smaller GPUs, like Navi 44, will not list hardware encoders. So that's actually extremely disappointing, because if that is actually absent on Navi 44, that means the budget RDNA4 GPUs, which again were apparently going to be called the RX 9000 series now, that could diminish its usefulness. How should I put this? So when you're looking at buying AMD GPUs instead of NVIDIA GPUs, and if they offer better performance per dollar, you're getting that budget. But if you constantly have to bring up, but if you buy the NVIDIA GPU, you get this feature, etc., that you don't get on the AMD one, it's annoying to have to always make all those caveats. Now, AMD already did this on GPUs like the 6500 XT and 6400, where they didn't have hardware encoders. And I think for many people, that was actually like, man, I don't need a lot of performance, but I would still like to, record gameplay on my GPU, that kind of thing. It kind of brings up a bit of a headache. So if it ends up being true that the more budget-focused RX 9000 GPUs don't have hardware encoders, again, that's just going to be a bit of an annoyance on whether or not you can recommend them to people, because people might want hardware encoder support. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this headline. We've got Intel's newest OX114 microcode, which was designed to be one of the ones resolving Arrow Lake S CPU issues. Apparently has been tested at least somewhat by CapFrameX, and they're reporting it can bring in an up to, now, up to always is like worst case or best case scenario, up to 18% performance drop. FrameX coming in with Alder Lake performance patches, massive performance drop with latest BIOS and MC and ME. Memory latency increased from 69 nanoseconds to 80 nanoseconds. I've run out of patience with this platform. Now, this certainly isn't the most like massively detailed testing that you could do here. It'd be nice to see a more wide range of tests and all of that. But if these patches are, maybe fixing some things but making other things worse, it's really not going to change the overall can I recommend people buy these GPUs kind of calculation, other than, maybe we just need, if their performance isn't really going to get patched, then maybe we just need a massive price adjustment, and that could at least make them exciting. I don't know. We'll see. In other hardware news, it's looking like there is a leaked picture of the Nintendo Switch 2 motherboard with the Nvidia SoC leaking out here. Now, I'm not sure we really learn all that much from this, so I'm not going to go into way too much detail on it, but it is looking like we're getting closer and closer to the Nintendo Switch 2, and I'm extremely interested to see what the Nvidia hardware in this is able to do. Obviously, it's going to be super kind of low powered. It's not the latest and greatest, but there was a lot of cool stuff that was able to actually run on the Nintendo Switch 1. Now that this Nvidia hardware should potentially be able to have, DLSS support, ray tracing support, like what kind of image quality are we going to be able to get out of this? I don't know. I'm pretty interested to see what we get from the Nintendo Switch 2 hardware. But again, I don't think we learn too much out of these other than it's probably coming soon if we're already getting these shots here. Now, we've had the Steam Awards. I don't want to go too much into this, but we've got Black Myth Wukong getting the Game of the Year. We have Metro Awakening getting the VR Game of the Year, and the Labor of Love Award for Elden Ring, I guess due to its big expansion DLC. God of War Ragnarok getting the Best Steam Deck Gaming Award, and Better with Friends going to Helldivers 2, Outstanding Visual Style Award going to Silent Hill 2, which I just finished myself and was very impressed with the game overall. Most Innovative Gameplay Award goes to Liar's Bar, which I have not played and don't know anything about, but maybe you know in the comments. Anyway, there's some other awards. Scroll through them here really quick, but let's go ahead and move on to other gaming news, which is Half-Life 3 confirmed, or at least another Half-Life game probably coming in 2025, or at least being announced in 2025. So who is Mike Shapiro, and why would we care about him tweeting a cryptic message about Valve, Half-Life, and G-Man? Well, he's the guy behind G-Man, and saying that coming in 2025 sounds interesting, and he doesn't make like random cryptic posts like this all the time. I believe the last time I could confirm he posted something Half-Life related was right around the Half-Life Alyx release. So I think there's a good chance we're getting another Half-Life game in 2025. Whether or not it's, officially Half-Life 3, like, who really cares at this point? But if this ends up just being like a Fortnite skin for the G-Man, I'm going to be very disappointed. Anyway, if you want a free game from Epic Games right now that's actually quite good and could give you a bunch of gameplay, Kingdom Come Deliverance. The second game will be coming out soon, and if you haven't played the first one, you can get the first one free today on Epic Game Store. So maybe go ahead and claim that free game. And in more disappointing news, if you have a Windows Mixed Reality headset, I'm seeing it reported in the changes, and I wouldn't classify this as an improvement log for Windows 11 version 24H2. We are seeing that plugging in to use a Windows Mixed Reality headset will not work, starting with this build. Windows Mixed Reality, Windows Mixed Reality, there we go, is no longer available to users as Windows Mixed Reality has been announced as deprecated. This includes the Mixed Reality Portal app and Windows Mixed Reality for Steam VR and Steam VR Beta. Existing Windows Mixed Reality devices will continue to work with Steam through November 2026 if users remain on their current released version of Windows 11, version 23H2, and do not upgrade to this year's annual feature update for Windows 11, version 24H2. This deprecation does not impact HoloLens. So basically what I'm getting out of this is if you actually use Windows mixed reality headsets, stay on Windows 11 23H2. Do not upgrade to 24H2. Maybe look into, can you continue to get like security updates without the big feature update? Anyway, there's that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to check out jawa.gg for epic deals and an amazing PC hardware store with code OWEN10. You can get $10 off your first purchase. And again, thank them for sponsoring today's video.